Hey guys, Kit here, Burn One. We're bringing you a top 4 deck breakdown for the most recent regionals. We actually have 4 regionals this, I guess this past 2 weekends or so, or weekend, I guess, actually, for the Verdant Still meta. I'm very excited to see what the breakdowns are. Obviously on screen here, you already see we have Mexico City. We'll start with that first of all. So let's take a look at the craft breakdown here, the deck distribution. It's basically what I expected overall, though I expected a little bit more Sword actually to show up in this event, because I do think Sword is probably the best deck in the format to be playing in general. Surprisingly, a lot of Abysscraft here in Mexico. I guess people here really love Abysscraft. I know Mono feels very powerful. It's a very, very good deck, along with Control Abyss right now is a very solid tier 2 deck in my opinion, so not surprised to see people really enjoying those 2 decks, most likely, as what I assume, since we don't have every deck list. But let's take a look at the top 4. So Steven's Sword craft deck here, not your Sword. Not surprised here. I do think it's the best deck in the format currently. This is relatively close to the same build I run. I think actually the only difference in this list compared to my list is that I only play 2 of the 1-drop Torrent Aether spell instead of 3 here. They're playing a 41 card list. I prefer to just play the clean 40 because I want to see everything I can possible in the deck. But yeah, everything else, very standard deck. I think this is basically the deck list that will topped for one of the GPs as well in Japan, but it was a trio event. We got to keep that in mind as well. But yeah, deck is super solid. Nothing really to talk about here. I mean, I posted this exact deck list essentially in a deck profile video that should be coming out either right after this or right before this. I don't know when I have it set to release, and most likely probably right after this comes out. Evo list here, not surprised. We're playing the one of here because, like I said in my deck profile, we only need 1 Mage Leader, only 1 Maisha as well, because there's only one time in the game we're going to play the Evo Maisha usually, which is like turn 9 or so later. Sometimes you do have to Evo it early, but it's not that big of a deal. We play 2 Octresses, just 2/2 line, very good. 3 Balion, and then 3 Viridia Magna. Very powerful deck list. I mean, I'm sure they understand how powerful it is because they won with this deck itself, which is great. So congratulations. Second place here, another Sword list. No surprise here. This one opting to play Leod here. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Leod just yet. I've done very minimal testing with Leod, but it's probably more for, I feel like, the Abyss and board-based matchups, because it's very hard to remove this card without having a board wipe, because it has Aura and Intimidate while on the board. Another surprising card to see in this list is Fall from Grace. I'm interested to know how they really played this card. It's a very interesting choice in the list, essentially. It kind of makes sense. I would say this makes a little more sense, essentially, if they were playing like the Maisha package, but this probably worked for them. This could also be surprise healing for themselves, because they could banish their own follower to heal 3 and draw a card if needed, which probably feels pretty good. Interesting too, they only play 1 of Mage Leader. I guess it's just for like having 4 Balions essentially, though I would prefer to see this as a 3 of in the list, just because I think it's so important to see Mage Leader or Balion within the first 3 turns of the game. It's very important in my opinion, because otherwise Mage Leader doesn't have a lot of things to really search out other than like Octress essentially are like the main cards it would be searching for, because it cannot search for Viridia Magna since it doesn't have Evo itself. Evo list here looks about right for what is going on. They do play 2 Octresses, but opted only to do 1 Octress Evo. I think a lot of times when I see lists like this, they opt only for 1 Leod Evo, because that's all you really need, and then they just play 2 Octress Evos. But outside of that, it's pretty standard here. 3 Viridia Magna, 3 Balion. Those are like the best Evo cards in the deck. So we just go ahead and fill out the rest with what other utility you need. Oh my god, I don't know why that was so hard to say. Next here, third place, we have Control Abyss. So this is kind of the list I've been messing around with too. It looks like they do play Undead King here to get more cards back from their grave when possible. And so that's always good to see here. Surprisingly, 3 of Silent Purge. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think I ever have a game where I need to like see 2 Silent Purges most games. 3 of Kawi. Kawi, a very powerful card into things like mono, even into sword. It can be very powerful too. Natural sword. If they're not used to playing around Kawi, it can be very awkward. So Kawi being a 3 of, I'm not too surprised here. I think in the list I played it had 2, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, list looks pretty solid. Triple soul conversion, surprisingly. I think, man, did my list actually play 3? It might have actually. Sometimes I only play this as a 2 of. But yeah, list looks great. It's solid overall. I don't see really any problem here. Pretty standard Evo line here. I think in my list I actually don't play Bellringer Evo. I just play the 2-2-2-2-2 line, essentially. Basically 2 of every Evo possible, and then go kind of from there. But yeah, Evo lineup looks solid. 3 of Gensetsu Evo, as saying double Israfil Evo seems all very, very powerful. Double Rolnai and 2 man, I'm forgetting his name right now. Oh, Dublane. That's Dublane. Ugh, whatever his name is. I can't say it properly. So yeah, congratulations there on 3rd. And 4th place, Natural Forest. Like I said before, I think this is one of the best decks to be playing. I don't think it's the best deck in the format, but I think it's the best deck that kind of counters all of the other tier 1 lists, because as long as you see the combo pieces on time or at the right timing, you can kind of just take control of the game from there, because Sin packing with Latica combo is just really, really powerful to just play off on your opponent's board, and it takes them a little bit to recover from. And yeah, list looks pretty solid. They opted for the 1-drop Aether spell here to generate either more healing, which feels fine as well. Outside of that, I don't see anything too spicy in this list. I'm not a big fan of the one of San Suzuka. I'd opt obviously for the 2nd Cassiopeia here, or the CC in this case. I just think having the potential strong board clears on turn 5 when needed feel really, really great. And then obviously I think Sets is a very strong healing, powerful ward card to be playing as well. But I also understand sometimes people just do not like that card because they can't get enough value out of it. And so forth. So I understand it kind of goes back and forth depending on what you want to do. I think San Suzuka is a little bit more aggro-y in that sense, like you can have extra pushes that way. But yeah, let's take a look at the Evo list. Evo list looks pretty standard. The only difference here is they're only playing 2 Laticas. I think most lists play 3 at this point. They are playing the San Suzuka. So they played the 1 of San Suzuka here to just kind of for the 1-1 line. And then Viridian Magna, they have it as a 2-1. I'm not a big fan of Viridian Magna in my list personally. I haven't tested too much with it, but it doesn't feel like that powerful in my opinion. But maybe it is required, because some of the matchups just require you to have a 4/4 ward that also heals you onto the board at some point to just kind of slow the game down. I could see it depending on how the meta shakes out. But I think a lot of the decks I would be most worried about with this is just generally Natra Sword and Mono. So unless this helps in both those matchups, I probably wouldn't play it personally. But deck list looks solid overall. So congratulations to all top 4 here. Next, we have Manila, Philippines. I hope I said that correctly. And this is what I'm talking about here. 25% sword. Sword, like I said, I feel is the best deck in the format. Maybe a lot of people here in the Philippines feel the same way. Abyss, relatively strong, 12%. Rune here, 15%. Kuon is still a very powerful deck, and then there are some people out there messing around with Dirt Rune, so I hope to see Dirt Rune maybe make it in at some event in the future. That'd be really hype to see. First place here, Kana Umar. UMR. I don't know. I should stop saying these names honestly, because I always butcher them. Looks like a super standard mono list. The only difference here I'm seeing off the back is we're playing Rolnai. Rolnai is a very interesting tech choice if you expect to play into a lot of sword or the mirror match a lot. I think Rolnai is probably one of the best tech choices to be playing, that also unfortunately takes up an Evo slot or 2. So you might have to mess around with your Evos a little bit. But it's a really powerful card, because if you play it on your essentially right before your sword goes into turn 6, it means their Princess Strike now cost 1 so they can't cast it for free off of Mistalina, which might mess up their turn a little bit, especially if they're not used to the interaction between Mistalina and Rolnai being on the board. It's very awkward. Obviously into rune decks, it hurts them as well. And even in the Abyss matchup, it suddenly makes your alpha drives cost 1 extra if you're not careful, and even some of your removal costs extra. So like, for example, even if you cast forgetting this guy's name, what is his name? Nicola. If you evo him and get his spell now costs 1, even though it costs 2 less in the EX zone, meaning that on turn 3 or 4, they can't just cast it for free. They have to have an extra play point, which means it delays this card another turn, which is really big for the mirror match as well. So I can understand why Rule 9 seems like such a powerful tech card choice. I haven't tested it super thoroughly. This was all more theory crafting when I was going through my deck builds and figuring things out. So I definitely want to try it out. If this guy got first place with Rule 9, I have more faith now that Rule 9 is going to be a really powerful tech card in mono itself. Not only that, it does also potentially eat a card on your opponent's field and forces them to discard a card. So it's a really powerful tech option. I'm very impressed by it for sure. Evo deck here, pretty standard. We got the 3 mono, 2 of Robo Goblins, 3 of Nicola, and then opting here for the 2 Rule 9 instead of the Gensetsu, which kind of makes sense because if you don't want to go into that elongated game, Rule 9 probably helps a lot with that to slow down your opponent as well. Ooh, oh, Kuon a bit. I was gonna say I thought this was for a sec Machina rune, but it is a Kuon list. It's pretty much standard. This is basically what we're expecting to see afterwards. They're playing the 1 of Alchemic Lore, which I think is a little bit more powerful now too, because of mono existing as a deck. So seeing Alchemic Lore on 5 to kind of blow up their board before they get a pop off probably feels amazingly great. We got the new girl here with her spell as well. What is her name here? Let's open this up. Eleanor and her spell as well. Both very powerful cards. Helps you control like the mono match and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, nothing too spicy here necessarily for this deck list that I'm seeing off the top of my, just a quick glance. 3 of Evo here, 2, 3, 1, 1. Oh, this Daria. There's no Daria in this list, obviously. Just had an extra slot. But yeah, looks like a really solid list overall. Not surprised. Third place here, another Natra sword list. Let's take a look here. Yeah, so this is interesting. They opted to play Usurping Blade here. Interesting choice. I'm wondering why they chose that. It's just, I guess, another way to interact with your opponent during their turn when they don't expect it. Dealing 5. I'm trying to think, does this clear anything we need to really worry about? I guess it handles Maisha in the mirror, for example. I can get rid of Swift Tigresses as well. So interesting card choice. I guess it also helps clear up some of the board against mono and stuff when they swing in with mono. I think, does mono become 5 health when it swings in a 7/5? I think it does. I mean, we could look up here, right? Mono. No, it becomes a 7/6. So this won't necessarily clear mono. I thought maybe it did. If it did, that's actually an interesting choice then for board control. Other than that, deck looks super standard. They opted obviously for only 2 main leaders here, which I think is fine. If you need to make a cut somewhere and you don't want to cut anything else, going to 2 main leaders isn't the worst thing in the world. 3 Tigress here helps not only control the board, but also helps push you damage when your opponent doesn't do anything on their turn 3. On their turn 2 that you really have to care about. You can just like turn 3, play this, swing in for 4, and now they have to deal with it. Leod here has a 3 of as well, go doing the 3/2 line instead, as you see the Evo deck here on the bottom. Once again, probably helps a lot with the mono matchups and in the mirrors and things like that. Other than that, deck looks pretty standard overall. We got the 3/3 line here, 2 main leaders, oddly enough. Interesting they went for the 2 main leaders. I guess it also helps you find Leods as well, because the only cards you can really search out, once again, is Leod and Balion. So a lot of times I feel like you don't need the second Evo, but in this case, they just probably had room and went for it. Fourth place, another Natra sword list. This one playing the twins from IMAS here. Another relatively powerful follower that can answer something on the board and like let you draw ditch and stuff like that. 3 main leader, which I like to see to guarantee more often seeing Balion on 3 or 4, especially going first or second. Rico as a 1 of also is very surprising. I'm wondering how that card plays out, because a lot of time it needs to be, is it your only follower or only card on board? Yeah, if there are no other followers. So you can play this if you have a bunch of trees on the board and still swing in with it to get extra damage in, along with also like clearing 2 things off the board essentially, or clearing something else off the board while also pushing some or clearing 2 things and pushing some damage as well. So this is probably an interesting card. I'm wondering how often I keep it in the mirror. It does have 6 attack too, so if you need to clear you know, like a Mistalina, it'll at least trade into Mistalina if you're unable to actually like pop something else with this, or you have to pop something else with this card as well. But yeah, interesting deck. Only one Octress. I'm not a big fan of only the one of Octress. I think Octress is just so good. Sometimes you bottom deck it because you'll see it off of Baleon, which is not the greatest thing to see off in the world. Evo deck, pretty standard for the most part. Because they only play one Octress, it makes sense that they just went ahead and played the 2 made leader Evos. Yeah, solid list overall though. Like it a lot. Moving on here, we're in Australia here on Melbourne. Once again, Sword 21%, expected for the most part. Abyss 17%. I think these are like the decks that I would expect to see the most play consistently throughout this meta, followed by Dragon and Forestcraft and maybe Runecraft being the other ones here. Looks like this event was relatively even spread, other than the Sword for the most part had a little bit more than everyone else, and same thing with it. Abyss probably had like an extra player or so. Surprisingly though, we got a Dragon Natra list making top cut here. Ooh, this list plays the Fortes. Not a big fan of playing the Fortes, but I understand it's hard not to play Forte because Forte is so good. Looking at this list though, looks pretty solid overall. Surprising they went for 3 Dragon Oracles instead of 3 of the Pterodactyls or Pterodons. I think this card is much better than playing Dragon Oracle currently, but I think this is fine if you prefer to like find the ramp for 2. That's, you know, go ahead. It worked out for them, obviously. What am I to say? Because they got first place here. Solid deck list all around. Obviously going for the Maisha package here, playing 3 of the Purgation's Blade, surprisingly. I'm wondering how powerful that was in their games, because we're leaning a lot less into the actual Valdane Burns in this sense, because we're cutting a lot of cards that aren't Natra cards in this list now by including Fortes, including the Dragon Oracles, including the Maisha package. So it seems like the game plan here, at least in this version of the deck, I would imagine, is we're playing more for the tempo. Valdane gives us an extra ping, 1 or 2 ping here and there, and then we get to the point where Fortes or the Maisha package wins the game for us, essentially. I can totally see that happening, because we're not even playing the Draconic Rites or something. I forget the name of the card. The 3-drop amulet that you can deal 2 damage somewhere whenever you discard a card. So yeah, list looks solid all around. I mean, it's still Natural Dragon, but it's more of a hybrid list, I would kind of say, in my opinion, because they don't play any of the other really aggressive, powerful stuff. Surprisingly, they went for this Maisha package stuff. Personally, I've been enjoying playing Aguri Cap in this slot instead. Obviously, Aguri Cap does end up taking 3 carrots in your EX or in your Evolve deck, which is kind of annoying. So if you don't like that, then you know you get the Fortes and the Maishas in there. It's like almost the same thing. We got another Kuon list here. Kuon still showing its supremacy of how consistently powerful it is. I like this list overall. I like the Fall from Grace in these types of lists. Yes, a lot of times you give your opponent a draw and heal, but that doesn't really matter because you have inevitability on your side with the whole Kuon D-Shift package. But this helps you answer some of the most annoying stuff. For example, like a Maisha on your opponent's turn when they swing in, and you're just like, no, Fall from Grace it, and it's gone, and you don't have to worry about it again because it does get banned away or banished away. But yeah, it's one of the ways we kind of can elongate the game here for the deck. I like the inclusion of this card as well. Solid all around. Let's take a look at the Evo deck. Oh, we're playing one of... They don't play the base form, I assume, right? Yeah, we're not playing one Europa in the list, unfortunately. I like Europa a lot, so I always get excited when I see it. Unfortunately, it's just there to fill out the Evo deck into 10 cards instead of 9. But yeah, congratulations. And then 3rd place, Justin Mouth here, going with Sword. Once again, we are seeing how powerful Sword is consistently topping here. Opting for Gemstaff Commander. Personally, I'm not a big fan. I'd rather just play the mid leaders, because Gemstaff Commander only helps you in the sense that it only helps you when you're going first, but if you're going second, this card is not very good to ever draw or play as well. It's a card you just discard immediately, whereas Made Leader is a very good turn 1 and going first and going second card, in my opinion, to help deal with the board and have a 2/2 body on the board and get your Baleon. But outside of that, the list is super standard overall. Nothing surprising here other than like the Gemstaff Commander. I know some people enjoy it a lot because they prefer to always go first with this deck, which makes sense. So they want those going first games, be able to like turn 3 Gemstaff Commander into searching Baleon for turn 4, or find whether pieces they are missing. Evo deck, obviously 2/2 3/3, super solid standard list. Really like it overall. Fourth place, Havencraft. Let's go. So this is a list that looks like to be a hybrid, yeah, like a hybrid ward mecha Machina Haven, essentially, with some of the storm stuff. Surprising, no Maisha in here, even though they're playing the Purgation's Blade. Obviously, Purgation's Blade is a very powerful card, so not the most surprising thing or a weird thing to be seeing itself. We play part of the Machina package here because it's still relatively powerful. We got the Storm cards as well as Winged Ruby. I know a lot of people were talking about playing this type of list with Wilbert as well, so I'm surprised not to see Wilbert in this list. But it's an interesting package too, because also this 2-drop up here, what is her name? The Heretical Sister, whatever. I'm horrible at reading, apparently. I can kind of find you key cards once you get your whole EX zone filled with Machina cards, essentially. And then Limonia being such a powerful board clear can help you not only keep Machina Abyss in check, but also kind of clear any opponent's boards you're afraid of dealing with. I guess the whole Storm Ward package stuff in here as well kind of helps a lot too, with having a win condition that feels fairly powerful, because one of my biggest condition or complaints about Machina Haven is that it has very good control tools but no really solid way to finish the game. I'm wondering if this Ruby Falcon, along with some of the other things like Amethyst Lion and these other like wards too, help really close out games, because you get that little extra incremental damage with the storms and with the wards being removed. Next is the Evolve deck here. Looks pretty solid overall, just due to what is being played in this list. I can't really comment too much because I didn't pilot this list or play this list myself, but it looks pretty good. I'm wondering how good Diamond Master is in this list. I'm wondering if Diamond Master could just be cut for like a Maisha or something instead, if they might feel like that's better. But Diamond Master also might like be really good because we're getting things like Ruby Falcon back in the graveyard on Evo and stuff like that, and makes it so like some of our other key cards here need to that we want to like protect, like Limonia or something, or even the Father card here that's really powerful, or even Techno Lord can get protected because this card because Diamond Master exists on the board. A very interesting list. I probably might try this list out a couple times just to see how it runs. It's a very interesting idea. I did not want to test it myself, but it looks like someone else did, which is good. And yeah, I think that is it. Oh no, we have one more. I think that's the that's fourth place for Australia here. Our last place here is Portugal. Man, we had a lot of events this past weekend, I guess. 21 Swordcraft as expected, but surprisingly 28% for Abysscraft. That is obnoxious. I wonder how many control and how many mono. I feel like mono was probably more represented than control. But let's take a look here at the first place list. We have a relatively standard mono list. I think a lot of times this is basically the list, except most people play 3 Gensetsus, but they're opting to play 2 Gensetsus and 1 Kawi, which I think is a really smart way to break up the fact that we don't always get to play more than 2 Gensetsus in a game, and we don't always necessarily need to find 2 Gensetsus. We just need to find 1 to Evo a lot of the times. So having a turn 5 Kawi into the mirror and other like board-based decks probably feels really good, especially into sword decks as well. So on the games we do see Kawi on turn 5 probably feel really good, leading into turn 6 Gensetsu with an Evo point possibly, or even turn 7 Gensetsu must feel very good. But yeah, outside of that, it's a really standard list to be expected. These are like numbers I expect to see in every Machina Abyss list, especially obviously featuring mono. Yeah, so congratulations there. Second place, another mono list. This looks like super standard mono list. The only difference I'm seeing here is we're not playing 3 Sanguine Core. What are we playing? See, we're playing 3 Deblame, only 2 Mechwing Angel here, doing 3 Whispers of a Dream as well. Only 2 Forbidden Arts. God, this card is so good. 1 of Death's Breath. That's a spicy choice here. 1 of Death Breath, because it's not something we're always searching for. But I guess with the extra mill, occasionally if you draw into it, it probably feels all right. But outside of that, the list looks pretty solid overall. I'm surprised to see Dublame here, but I mean, Dublame's a really good card that you can't really complain. It helps in the mirror to control the board. It helps you like when needed to, like, instead of having to like set up Machina boards, we can play Dublame and stuff out and kind of like ping and control the board a little bit early game and wait towards the mid to late game to like do a good Machina turn into a Gensetsu turn and so forth. So I can see the power of that card as well, though it's not my favorite tech choice in mono list personally. So congratulations to you. Third place, another Natra sword list here. It looks super standard once again. For a second I was like, only 2 Trail of Lights, but there's 3. There's different art cards here. Yeah, this looks like a pretty standard list. We're not playing the Maisha package, so they're playing Leod plus Swift Tigress, which is really good. Once again, only opting for 2 made leaders. Personally, I think it's 3 is the correct choice, but 2 is totally fine as well. Just so we can get the Baleons, like I said, very important. Only 1 made leader Evo, obviously, because we only need to see it once essentially to find our first Baleon and then kind of snowball from there. Double Leod Evo makes sense. Only one Octrus Evo. Personally, I like having both Octrus Evos in my list because Octrus just feels so powerful in my opinion. And then the 3/3 here for the last 2 Evos as expected. Congratulations, sword list obviously being very powerful. Once again, we have another sword for our 4th place in our final deck list here. Once again, very solid, pretty standard list. Opting to play Swift Tigress in here as well. Yeah, I was just making sure they had the Maisha package. I was like, this is so weird. But yeah, so they cut. Looks like they cut one out. God, my brain is shutting off. Outrunning the encroaching heat. There we go. To be able to fit one of the Swift Tigresses in, and then they opted to play a 41 card deck instead of a clean 40 list. It looks like here. Only 2 main leaders once again. I mean, you know, I've already made it clear. I like 3. 2 is fine though. Doing the triple Octrus as well, which means they probably play 2 Evos. They do, which I think is good. I've been trying to figure out how to fit an extra Octrus in here without going over the 41 card, 40 card deck size, because I think the 40 card deck, even though it's like probably a percentage difference, I like the consistency in this deck, and I don't want to hurt the consistency much more than I have to like play extra tech cards. But yeah, list looks pretty solid overall. Surprised to see the Maisha package in here with the Swift Tigress, but Swift Tigress also is still a very powerful card. They made it work, made it able to fit in this list, so, you know, congratulations to them. Solid list overall. Actually, I just noticed they're playing 2 Maisha Evos instead of the 3 Viridia Magna Evos, which I guess is all right. If you're expecting to Evo Maisha early on, just to clear something and like cast Trail of Light again, essentially from the graveyard, or a Purgation Blade at some point, it kind of makes sense. It's like a removal till its body. It's a really powerful card that people have to answer once again. So, you know, having the second Evo kind of makes sense in that scenario if they're playing in that style, especially for the fact that they do play Swift Tigress. Maybe that's part of the reason they play the second one. Not exactly 100% sure, but it worked for them, obviously. So yeah, that concludes all the deck lists from the past 4 regionals. We had 4 BCSs happening, so I'm happy to see it's kind of, the meta's kind of, you know, playing out how I expected it. A lot of Abyss, a lot of Sword, decent on Dragon and Force, you know, running around. So yeah, with that being said, guys, you know, thanks for watching as always. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later.